I finally finished the LS swap into my 240, and on this episode of Eat Sleep Drive, I'm going to let you in on why it's not as easy as you think to do an LS swap. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eat Sleep Drive. And yes, I'm finally done with my 240, as you've gathered from the title and from the opening sequence. I'm super happy to have this car done, but I wanted to talk to you guys today about the whole process and how it was definitely harder than I thought it was going to be. Now, there's definitely a thought amongst a lot of people online, and me probably included, I was probably guilty of this before I started this swap, that LS swaps are pretty easy. You just buy a kit, bolt some crap together, and bing bang boom, you have an LS swapped whatever. Now, that's not quite the case. And I'm gonna be talking to you guys today about why that's not quite the case. And this is gonna be a little bit specific to a 240, but it's really gonna be true for any LS swap because ultimately it's kind of the same thing. Now, I wanna preface this with saying that I'm not saying that LS swaps are impossible. Hell, I did it in my tiny ass garage here. I'm not a full-time mechanic, I'm just a hobbyist, and I got it done. So it's far from impossible, but I just get really irked when people say, oh, like, why didn't you have that done way earlier? It's just an LS into a 240, there's kits for that. It's not quite that easy, and that's what I'm gonna cover today. So I'm gonna give you 5 things that make an LS swap harder than you think. So the first thing I wanna talk to you guys about is what I will call the snowball effect. The snowball effect is the idea that when you're building something, taking something apart, while you're in there, you start doing other things. And like, you do one thing and then it leads to another and leads to another. So how that applies to an LS build is while the engine is out, I'm thinking, I don't want to have to pull this engine back out again after I put it in. So I should probably do gaskets, right? This is a engine that's been sitting around for a while. It's from a 99 Camaro, you know? Probably a good idea to do the head gaskets and all the top end gaskets, valve covers, so things just don't leak. And well, while you got the heads off, maybe it makes sense to put a cam in it, you know? So you're like, well, I'll put a big cam in it, make a little more power. And then, and then you say, okay, I'll put a big cam, but to support a big cam, I need to do valve springs, retainers, all that good stuff in the heads. All right, well, now, you know, I got a cam, I got all the head work, I'm getting the heads refinished, make them nice and flat. And then also while the engine's out, I should do a starter, an alternator. These are just things that are easy to do. And if you only want to do them once, they're so easy to do while the engine's out that you want to do them. So things just snowball, things lead to another. It's the same thing with the rear end. I was like, well, I don't want to be doing one wheel peels, so you might as well put a cause two-way in it so it can hook up. It just, one thing leads to another. So what that means is ultimately you end up doing more work than you initially thought of, and certainly spending more money than you initially thought of. Now on to the second reason that LS swaps are harder than you think. So everyone knows that there are LS kits out there to be able to swap into many different cars. Now, my 240 is certainly an example where there are plenty of kits that exist, but these kits are far from complete, and that's what people don't really understand. You will see like a stage 3 kit from Siki, which makes it look so complete, and it comes with so much stuff that really helps you out, obviously. But there's a lot of things that are not included. So for example, an intake. An intake's pretty important. An intake is not included. All of these heater hoses and coolant hoses, you can see these heater hoses running down here, those are not included. So it's a lot of trips back and forth to the hardware store. You know, not terribly complicated stuff. We also got the brake booster lines, vacuum lines, stuff like that is not included with the swap. And that, you know, those smaller things are not necessarily a huge deal. but they do add up. Other things that are super important that these kits don't come with are an exhaust. No one makes an exhaust for the Sicky kit, and I had to get this fully custom made. The other thing that the kit does not include is a shifter. The stock shifter does not fit at all without hitting the dash. So you need a shifter, you need an exhaust, you need intake. I mean, I'm definitely forgetting about some things, but these kits are not quite as complete as you first thought. On to item number 3 with LS swaps. Basically Murphy's Law, what can go wrong will go wrong. And this is pretty much true for any project or any time I've worked on a car. If it can go wrong, it will. And a half-hour job or 15-minute job ends up taking 2 to 3 to 4 hours. That's just how things go with cars. Some of the more notable things with this specific car are when I was putting in the transmission, mounting it to the new brace, one of the bolts was cross-threaded already, and the threads were just completely hosed in this where it mounts to the body to the transmission. And so that was a whole ordeal of me having to order a helicoil kit, helicoiling it out, and ultimately got it sorted. But it's just one of those things where you think you're going to get X accomplished today, you don't get that accomplished, and you have more things added to your item list to do. Now the second to the last reason kind of revolves not so much around the car, but on the information that it takes to swap this car. There is obviously no shortage of people who have LS swap cars. It's well documented in a lot of different places, but that's the thing. Well documented in a lot of different places. I had a folder of no less than 20 favorites around all the information that I need to swap this car. Now like I said, there's a lot of resources out there for people who have done swaps like this, and they post up their build thread and stuff like that. But the reality is that you're not gonna go to one place and it's gonna have everything you need. Hell, Sicky includes a DVD with basically how to do the swap, and it's still left out a lot of stuff. And it was 2 hours long of, fully edited DVD footage of basically someone installing this engine. So when you think about 2 hours of fully edited footage of, this part goes here type deal, that gives you kind of an idea of how much work it actually is. And like I said, that wasn't even all of it. So you have to have a good plan. You have to have a good list of everything that needs to get done, and understand that if you're going to take this on, you are going to uncover things that you didn't initially know based on just reading on the internet what you need for an LS swap. Now the very last reason LS swaps are difficult is because this guy right here. Now you might look at this, and I even look at this and say, man, it almost looks like this thing was made for this car. I mean, it looks semi-factory, and I wish I could say that's the case, because everything about this engine, and this is the last reason, everything about this engine will fight you from start to finish. Here's what I mean by that. This was obviously not originally meant to go in the car. So you look at things like, and I'm going to try and forgive me here with the camera work, but you can kind of look down here at how close this header clearance is to the frame rail. It's ridiculous. It's so close that in here, there's a steering column somewhere, and it runs in between the headers. Before the collector, the steering column runs in between there. That's how tight of a clearance this is. So, when it comes to connecting things in the back of the engine, the side of the engine, over here you've got the starter, trying to connect that thing, under the exhaust manifold, under the headers, it's just everything about this engine will fight you going into this car. The other most notable thing is you literally have to bash the transmission tunnel in order to fit the T56 transmission. Yes, bash the transmission tunnel with a hammer so you can get that just little bit of extra clearance. Just understand that this engine was never supposed to go in here despite what anyone thinks, and it's gonna fight you all along the way. Well guys, I hope you found this video a little bit insightful. Once again, I'm not trying to say that this is an impossible swap. It's just ultra difficult. I'm not trying to say that at all. I'm just saying that a lot of people online don't give people credit that do this swap. It's not quite as easy as you initially think. I encourage anyone that is interested in doing the swap, still go through with it. I'm not trying to dissuade you from doing it because it's definitely worth it. I'm super pumped now that the car is finished, and it's a ton of fun to drive. So just keep in mind that it's not just all flowers and rainbows. You buy a kit and everything just falls together. So I hope you guys found this video interesting, and check out my build if you want to see more about this car. There's going to be plenty more now that it's finally done. I'm going to do all kinds of coverage with it. So appreciate you guys watching as always, and see you next time.